White versus Tito Ortiz.
I absolutely would have won that boxing match. And Tito's just a really dumb human being. He's not intelligent at all. He's very, very stupid, okay?
UFC President Dana White is a well-known face in the sports and MMA community, known for his outspoken and blunt demeanor. Over the years, he's tangled with plenty of fighters, but none quite like Tito Ortiz. Their beef is legendary, and so intense that they once considered settling it in a boxing ring. This wasn't just for show, it was the real deal. White's hatred for Ortiz went deeper than your usual disputes, marking a rocky relationship that became a staple in UFC history. And here's the real reason why Dana White hated Tito Ortiz. Now, things weren't always heated between Dana White and Tito Ortiz, and both met in the late 90s. Back then, Ortiz was already fighting in the UFC, having 4 bouts under his belt with the company, which was under different ownership at the time. White, on the other hand, was a boxing enthusiast and fitness instructor who accidentally fell into fight management. Their relationship kicked off when Ortiz confided in White how badly the UFC was treating him, including not paying him on time. Seeing an opportunity to help, White stepped in as Ortiz's manager and took charge of contract negotiations. He successfully got Ortiz a much better deal, securing higher pay than ever before. This smart move led to Ortiz becoming the 205-pound king after UFC 29 in 2000. But then, in 2001, Dana White got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity when the UFC was in financial trouble and on the brink of collapse.
Bad it was in the UFC at the time, that they owed him money and, all kinds of issues he had with the former owner.
Teaming up with his childhood friends Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta, White seized the chance to buy UFC for $2 million, becoming its president. At that time, White was managing fighters like Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell. However, becoming president meant he could no longer represent fighters and promote events simultaneously. So this shift from manager-client to promoter-fighter started causing friction in White and Ortiz's relationship, because as soon as Ortiz, who was the light heavyweight champion, became a fighter under White's promotion, he started demanding more prize money than previously agreed upon. Things took a turn for the worse after Ortiz defeated Ken Shamrock at UFC 40 in November 2002. Ortiz, the promotion's biggest star at the time, held out for more money, delaying a mega bout against rising knockout artist Chuck Liddell. This dispute led to Ortiz clashing publicly and privately with White, claiming unfair treatment as a champion. Ortiz didn't fight for nearly a year, intensifying the conflict and driving a deeper wedge between him and White. But things really blew up after Ortiz got back in the ring after almost a year and lost to Randy Couture at UFC 44. That loss ended Ortiz's epic title run, which was the longest in the light heavyweight division until John Jones came along. Just like that, Ortiz wasn't the champ anymore, and his days as the top dog in the UFC were over. Dana White said Ortiz came back with a new manager and started talking all kinds of crazy stuff about how White never did anything for him and screwed him over the whole time. White said he comes out with his new manager and starts saying crazy about how I never did anything for him and I was effing him the whole time. Just off the charts crazy effing shh. That betrayal really nuked their relationship and made their feud even worse. After that point, Dana White and Tito Ortiz were definitely no longer friends. Things weren't going great for Ortiz either. He followed up his loss to Couture with a knockout loss to Chuck Liddell at UFC 47. He did bounce back with a win against Patrick Cote, but then took a break from the UFC in 2005. During this time, he got offers from several promotions, but none of them worked out. Ortiz went about a year and a half without fighting in the UFC and wasn't making money. Eventually, Ortiz and White talked things out, and White picked Ortiz as a coach for Season 3 of The Ultimate Fighter. Ortiz returned to the UFC and strung together 3 wins, beating Forrest Griffin and Ken Shamrock twice, earning another title shot. But at UFC 66, Ortiz got knocked out by Chuck Liddell again in his last attempt to reclaim his title. That loss in 2006 marked the start of a winless streak, and his beef with White flared up again. By 2007, things got so bad that White and Ortiz agreed to a real-deal boxing match. White, confident in his abilities, started training seriously, losing weight, and even got the Nevada Commission to sanction the bout. They set a date for the fight at a gym in Las Vegas, with the commission overseeing the event. But 2 days before the match, Ortiz called White and said he was letting him off the hook, which really ticked off White and the commission officials. The reasons were unclear at the time, but Ortiz later revealed he backed out because he wasn't getting paid for the boxing match. White, however, claimed it was because Ortiz knew what would happen after White allegedly beat the living out of him during previous sparring sessions. The fight never happened, but the animosity between them was solidified. After that, things went downhill fast. Even after the boxing match fiasco, Ortiz kept taking shots at White in interviews, calling him a wannabe gangster, and even wore a shirt to the UFC 84 weigh-ins that read, "Dana White is my B." White fired back, calling Ortiz an idiot, a liar, and an effing moron. He even revealed they once got into a fistfight on a flight to Japan. Dana recounted that he, the Fertitta brothers, Ortiz, and matchmaker John Silver were on a private plane when Ortiz put him in a neck crank and refused to stop even after Dana tapped. UFC 84 saw Ortiz lose by unanimous decision to Lyoto Machida, marking his last UFC fight at that time. He chose not to re-sign, citing his frustration with White as a major factor. After leaving the UFC, Ortiz was approached by several promotions, including Elite Extreme Combat, Affliction, and the American Fight League. However, a clause in his old UFC contract prevented him from signing with or fighting for any other organization until mid-2009. Despite this, Ortiz eventually returned to the UFC after he and White claimed to have made amends. In a conference call announcing Ortiz's return, Dana stated, "Everyone wants to see Tito fight, and Tito will retire in the UFC." Ortiz did return, but things were different this time. The former 205-pound king only won 1 of his 6 fights after his return, leading to his retirement from the UFC in 2012. As Ortiz's career was winding down, it seemed like he and White had finally buried the hatchet. Ortiz admitted he regretted the ugly feud from 2003 through to 2008 and was sent off into retirement as a Hall of Famer. But the peace between White and Ortiz didn't last long. When Ortiz came out of retirement to sign with Bellator, the feud reignited in full force. Over the next 11 months, their beef was back to its former glory. Ortiz started taking shots at White and the UFC, claiming that fighters were essentially slaves to White and weren't getting a fair share of the profits. Ortiz said, "I thought slavery was over a long time ago. It's just one of those things that you can't trust a word that man says. When you can't do that, how can you work for him? When you work for a person and they're bad-mouthing you no matter what, how can you work for them?" One of the big things now is bullying, and he's one of the biggest bullies I'd say in the business. He's a big bully. White fired back saying, "I shouldn't even ask that question if he knows what a slave means, because he's one of the dumbest mother effers you will ever meet. Seriously, he's a slave to stupidity is what he is." During a 2013 radio interview with Power 106, White was asked if he ever wanted one fighter to lose more than another. He joked, "Of course not, I'm always neutral, and there'd never be that situation. You know how many times Tito fought that I wanted to see him get his ass whooped? Every time he got beat was absolute fun for me." White went on to say, "In the 13 years I've been in this business and owned this company, the only time I've ever done this. When Tito and Chuck fought for the first time, I told Chuck, I want your gloves and the trunks that you beat the snot out of him in. I put them in a glass case and hung them up in my house. That's a fact. I hung it up right in my house. Every time I walk in my door, the trunks are right there." To this day, you can still sense the tension between Dana White and Tito Ortiz. Whenever Ortiz's name comes up, White just goes off, and the real reason White hates Ortiz's guts? Well, it all goes back to the critical years between 2001 and the 2010s, when the UFC was fighting for its life. White was dealing with the uproar over violence on TV, tough health and safety rules, limits on pay-per-view, and the company's shaky finances. The UFC burned through tons of cash before they started making it back, and during those tough times, Ortiz made things even harder with his constant demands for more money. White spilled that one of Ortiz's worst traits was always trying to mess up deals at the last minute, causing chaos and headaches. This behavior made White loathe Ortiz even more. White stressed that Ortiz pulled these stunts when the UFC was at its weakest, saying, "At the time, when the company was most vulnerable, Tito Ortiz was the worst to deal with. You have a deal with him, you start moving forward, and he'd call you 3 days before the fight saying, 'I want more money.' Yeah, that's not how it works." So that's why White hates Ortiz's guts. Who was right or wrong doesn't matter much. Ortiz added reasons for wanting more money, but his timing and tactics wrecked their relationship. Even now, Ortiz is out of the UFC's good graces, and Dana White clearly hasn't forgotten these slights. Their bad blood runs deep, and it doesn't look like Dana White will be forgetting it anytime soon. And there you have it, the real reason why Dana White hated Tito Ortiz. If you enjoyed the video, then please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell notification so you get notified when we drop a new video. Also, tell us down in the comments section which part of their feud shocked you the most. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.